You'd grown up in an unfortunate childhood, one full of running, hiding, and bad decisions. You were raised as a villain, and necessarily were still one today, but you knew for a long time that what you did wasn't okay. However, you weren't terrified of what your parents would do if they were to leave. They cared for you and your safety, but nonetheless, still terrifying villains that could hunt you down or pay someone to kill. Okay, your villain identity was unknown to the world, and you didn't have some sickening appearance that made you want to hide. You were rather average in your opinion, yet you managed to catch the attention of a certain top pro hero, Katsuki Bakugou. Wait, why does this sound familiar? Don't tell me I'm doing something that's already been done. But anyways, he was your boyfriend for 2 years now, and he had asked you to start living with him. This immediately presented a lot of problems. You were an adult and no longer lived with your parents. That wasn't the issue. The real problem was still hiding the fact that you were a villain. You'd run into him while doing villain work several times, but never never actually fought or even talked to him. He never knew it was you, and that would be a lot harder to hide if you lived with him. You couldn't resist that look on his face when he asked, though. It wasn't threatening, rather, it was more pleading. His eyes alone gave away the fact he couldn't stand being apart from you every day and wanting to be able to see you from whenever he woke up to when he fell asleep. You said yes, of course. A pleading Bakugou was a hard sight to deny. Today, Bakugou had come home with bruises, scrapes, and cuts on him. He'd been arriving home like this more often. Not that you were any different. Heroes attacking your family villain group had increased. It often left you with, luckily, only small injuries. Katsuki, I know you're a hero and all, but stop walking off like you're fine with those injuries. You scolded him, gently placing a bandage over one of the smaller cuts he received. I was fine, Yin. I don't need your help, he growled. You raised an eyebrow at his behavior. Generally, his response was quietly saying, I'm sorry or thank you, then kissing you on the cheek. What's got you in such a bad mood today, huh? You asked. Stupid Deku, being the number one hero and getting to beat up that stupid villain, he grumbled. What villain? You asked curiously. That stupid fucking villain people keep calling Shadow Queen or something. He punched that prick so hard they passed out. He goes way too easy on them. I'd beat that damn villain till they can't even move, he replied. They sent a shockwave throughout you. Normally you found it a bit cute when he would talk about villains. He always seemed so happy and hyper when he did. Bakugou really did act a lot like the Deku he always despised and strives not to become when it become to talking about hero work. But now, he just seemed deadly, evil even. You were the villain Katsuki was talking about, practically murdering. Despite how much you attempted to not associate yourself with the villain you secretly were, it was difficult in times like this. And in the incident earlier, Deku hadn't gone easy on you. Maybe compared to some of the larger villains he faced, punching you must have looked as soft as a slap with a feather. However, those larger villains were often larger in size, and that small hit hurt. You didn't get a concussion when you hit the wall. Though. Burst through it really, due to the mask in your suit having some protective metal to prevent. That didn't leave you free of injuries. There was a nasty purple and blue bruise on your stomach where he hit you. It hurt really badly, but Katsuki otherwise didn't notice it didn't need to know that. Please be careful if you do, you said, kissing his forehead. Of course, he replied, kissing the back of your head. You blushed, as you always did when he acted so uncharacteristic. Come on, Katsuki, I have dinner ready for us. You smiled as he stood up. You're amazing, Yin. I should marry you already. He smirked as you blushed dark red from this statement. The next week, your parents had brought you on a mission. There would be about 10 others with you attacking a hero agency. It was very early in the morning, about 4 p.m. Katsuki hadn't been home since he had said he was on a mission that he couldn't describe to you, for safety reasons. Why do we have to attack here, you asked. They have information on us. That we can't let them keep, one of the people in the group explained. We're here. Yin, get ready. Your parent, at the front of the group, said. By the way, you can pick who was saying that. You nodded, pulling the mask you wore over your face. It was black, along with your costume, and both included several thick white lines that were the symbol on the middle of your chest, the symbol of your family's villain group. You always thought the symbol was stupid, but everyone in the group averted it on everything. It was a holy cross with a small X at the point of the cross. We cut the power. Go, someone said. Several people pushed you out of the hideout location. You looked around before entering the dark building. People inside were confused about the power outage, including the pro hero also present. Katsuki had introduced him to you when you had visited him at work. He was Todoroki Shoto, known as the highly creative hero named Shoto. He was currently number 3 of the pro hero ranking, below both Midoriya and Katsuki. Todoroki had an amazing quirk, in your opinion. Half cold, half hot. Sorry, I said it backwards. His left side controlling fire and his left side controlling ice. Even with using fire side to provide some illumination around the area, it provided no stop to you easily sliding past him and the others on the floor. I got to the second floor, past the pro hero. You informed the people listening in through a earpiece you had. Great. The information will be on the 3rd floor. The room won't be hard to find. It's labeled data adversons, and I'll instruct you from there. The navigator said. Navigator. Oh my God, I can't speak. If you see it's there's. You wanted to ask for an outside status, but you were stopped at what seemed to be an explosion sound coming from the earpiece. Your navigator and anyone else already had likely gotten attacked. You had to move the earpiece away a bit due to the awful ringing coming from it in the aftermath of the attack. Shit, you mumbled. It wasn't good that your only source of instructions had likely been taken out. Although you were a bit happy that they got attacked, you didn't support what they did and didn't want to be a part of it, so you were rather often rooting against yourself. Yay! Hardly a few minutes after the attack, a loud, familiar voice came from downstairs. There's a fucker inside. They cut the power. Katsuki's here. That must have been the explosion taking out them. I can't fight him, you thought. Shadow, you heard your parents' voice utter your code name through the earpiece. You placed the earpiece back into your ear. Oh my God, you are getting the information no matter what. Fight if you have to. This could jeopardize our group and everything in it. Fuck this group, you mumbled, quiet enough not to be heard by the earpiece. I'm getting out of here. It's not worth it, you said quietly. You hid as you heard footsteps coming up the steps, creating a weapon out of the shadows for your protection. That boyfriend of yours, Katsuki Bakugou, you wouldn't want anything to happen to him. your parent threatened. You couldn't. He's a pro hero. You don't have that power. You replied a bit louder than you intended. We can and we will get that damn information, Yin. They growled. Before there was a crackle of sound shutting off connection, it went silent. You couldn't even hear talking like you had prior from the floor below. You stayed incredibly quiet, trying to listen for anything. Eventually you heard footsteps got closer and closer before people entered the floor, Todoroki looking calmer as ever, and Bakugou looking like a maniac with the lighting from Todoroki's flame. I'll search the third floor. You look here. The villain could be anywhere right now, Todoroki said. I'll blow them the second I see them, Bakugou growled, he beginning to search the floor. His he jiggles the doorknob, successfully entering some rooms.
P.S. That popcorn is still there.
After, as he obviously hadn't found anything. You gulped nervously. There was no easy way to get out from here. The only thing you could do was run for the stairs. Who won? His back was turned. I think it's supposed to say whenever his back was turned, but it says who won. It wouldn't be hard since he was entering rooms. However, he could likely hear you, and you had no clue where Todoroki was on the next floor. Making a distraction was pointless, as all the shadows would steam from you. Therefore, he'd quickly find the source and attack you. Hey, come out, wherever you are, Bakugou randomly yelled into the room while sparkling his hands. It was intimidating tactic. Afterwards, he slammed the door shut. That was more out of anger than a strategy. However, the door slammed was what did it for you, and you let out a bit of a yelp at the unexpected loud noise. He obviously found you quickly. There you are, he growled. Bakugou turned towards you. You hadn't even noticed he had been charging up his direct shot until he already began to fire it. You quickly formed a shield, time to block it, but the shield disappeared almost immediately due to the light created by his attack. I'm going to kick your ass, he yelled, hitting you a bit while a long-range explosion. It was a reckless move on his part in the building with several people just upstairs, and he likely knew that too. The smoke cleared slowly, leaving you both in fear and acceptance for another attack. Dynamite, what's going on? Todoroki was now running down the stairs. Once he reached the lower floor, he was greeted with his former high school classmate using the force of an explosion to launch the villain through the side of the building. There was no doubt the villain was out. He watched their body fly like a rag doll, hit the wall, and slum over the floor. The light from the attack left you unable to do anything but become a rag doll. Your vision faded in and out, and your breaths were hazy and weak. Let me see your pathetic face, shadow bitch, Bakugou said, a sinister smirk on his face. You saw that smirk sometimes, just to you, with a bit of softness in his expression, made it less eerie than it is now. No, you trailed off. Bakugou laughed. You're fucking pathetic, and you're the one of the worst villains. You couldn't even attack me. He walked over. You could feel his gloved hand grab the top of your mask. You couldn't even feel your arms at this moment. Much less move them to stop him. Katsuki pulled off the villain mask. He was in shock for a second. He recognized the hair-colored hair, those odd-colored eyes. His girlfriend, you, Yen Lin, was the villain known as Shadow Queen. talked constantly to you about his hatred towards the villain, but now he was conflicted. Oh, yeah. He hoped this was some kind of sick joke. Someone's quirk trying to catch him when he's at his most vulnerable. He'd rather have this be a situation where you're kidnapped and forced to be a villain. Yin, he accidentally stuttered. I'm sorry, Katsuki. You coughed, finally passing out after saying those words. Lin? Why is she here and injured? Todoroki made it down to the street from the building. Get the police and medics over here. Tell them that those guys attacked. I'll handle Yin, he said, carefully picking you up. Todoroki suddenly connected the dots, seeing the mask and the villain costume near you. Bakugou, we have to turn her in if she's a villain. Oh, the villain, Todoroki said quietly. No, we don't. She wouldn't do something like this unless she was being forced to. I'm taking her to the hospital and getting answers myself. If anyone asks, pin the villain as one of those guys over there. Bakugou gestured with his shoulder towards the guys from your team, currently passed out and getting tied or handcuffed by the sidekicks. You're a hero, Bakugou. It's illegal to be, Todoroki started. Fuck the law. He growled back. Todoroki saw the look in Bakugou's eyes, pain and sadness. He was clearly experiencing a range of emotions. Not only was his girlfriend in pain and unconscious due to him, but she could also be possibly a villain. Todoroki sighed, grabbing his device and checking to see the status of the police. Even though they didn't exchange words to confirm it, Bakugou was sure that Todoroki was agreeing to let him go. Katsuki felt a small bit of relief at that. He quickly rushed off to the nearby ER where you could be treated. Beep, 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 beep. A hospital? He wondered. The beeping sounds of the machine and the bright lights led you to the admiration as you came back to consciousness. Everything was blurry, though, as you opened your eyes, and it left you a bit unsure. When your vision became clear again, you were able to look at your surroundings. You were hooked up to machines, monitoring your vitals, and currents surrounded your bed. Good morning, Miss Lin. How are you feeling? A doctor said, moving the curtain aside and stepping into your bed area. I'm all right. Your voice sounded like sandpaper lined your throat, but it didn't hurt to speak. He nodded. That's good. I need to check your vitals and such. If you're continue to feel all right, then there's nothing we need to worry about. Are there any questions you have? What happened? You asked, watching as he looked over at the machine beside you and wrote down some numbers. Earlier yesterday morning, you were admitted into the hospital by a man who claimed to be your boyfriend, Bakugou Katsuki, or the pro-hero Dynamite. Is that correct? He replied. You nodded. Katsuki is my boyfriend, yes. I don't know about the rest. Of course. I was just making sure that all the claims lined up. Earlier yesterday morning, you were caught up in a large-scale villain attack and got injured. You were very lucky for the circumstances and only to have a few broken bones with mild injuries to the back of your skull. The most that will cause is headaches and perhaps a few migraines. Do you need me to repeat anything? He exclaimed. You shook your head, allowing him to continue going. You remembered most of what happened up until Bakugou began attacking you. Everything sort of just appeared afterwards. Katsuki must have found out. He must have so many questions right now. How can I explain this to him? You're currently on strong pain medicines right now, so you might not feel that yet. We'll work out the prescription you'll need before you're discharged. You broke a few ribs, have a hairline fracture in your left arm.
an ankle. I'll have a nurse come in later to discuss the costs and how you'll take care of that. Everything sound good?" You nodded once again. "Great. If you need anything written down or repeated, I'll have your nurse do that. Is there anything else you needed?" he asked. "No, I'm all right," you replied. "All right, ask the nurses if you need anything. You do have a visitor, your boyfriend, Bakugou, who I mentioned earlier. Would you like me to send him up?" he asked with his final question, and he began to leave the area. "Yes, please." You nodded. The doctor said something else you didn't quite hear before leaving the room. You waited anxiously. In usual Bakugou fashion, he didn't leave you waiting so long. "Yin!" Bakugou flung the curtains open hardly, even a minute later. "What the fuck happened back there? Why were you? What were? I need to know." He fumbled over his questions and quickly sat down beside your bed. "I'm sorry that I didn't tell you before," you said, eyes watering. He kept silent to allow you to continue, and you did. You explained everything to him, starting with how you were born into villainy, the crazy missions your parents made you go on, how you feared leaving, and finally, how you ended up here. As you explained it all, the tears began slipping down your face. You had to pause at multiple parts when you could no longer speak clearly. "Stop that. I fucking hate it when you cry," he mumbled, wiping the tears on your cheeks. "When are you going to turn me in?" you asked. You wiped the rest of the tears with the back of your hand. "I'm not. For right now, everyone thinks the Shadow Queen is some bitch that was a part of that villain group at the attack. It's going to stay that way. You're a good person, Yin. You didn't choose to live this life or do any of that shit. It's not your fault. You're not the villain. Your shit parents are. And we're going to live a much better life together, away from them," Bakugou replied. Even with the most reassurance you'd ever heard from him, you still felt unsure of it all. "What happens if they come back to find me? What if they hurt you? They threatened me before," you replied fearfully. "And you think anything can get past me? Please, I'll kick their ass before they can lay a finger on you," he scoffed. You couldn't help but chuckle at his words. No matter how arrogant he sounded, you found it cute to no end. "Thank you, Katsuki. I love you." You smiled, and the IV still in your arm made it hard to sit up to the certain point, so he leaned down to help, and you pecked his lips. "Whatever," he blushed. You smiled towards him. You might have had an unfortunate life, but you had one hell of a good boyfriend.